Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Football Fandemic, where this week we are in theme. Trick or treat NFL. We're going to look back at week 8 games and decide which were tricks, which were treats. We're going to look forward to week 9 and just decide which are the treats and which are duds. Here on the Football Fandemic. Today is Halloween. My kids will not let me forget. My son woke up and he said, "Dad, it's the second best holiday of the year. We have to do school?" I'm like, "Yes, we have to do school." But my son does think Halloween is just after Christmas. So
smart kid.
Smart kid. He likes the candy. He likes dressing up. All of that business.
Number one holiday, President's Day.
I think that's the one he was thinking of. President's Day, then Halloween. Yeah, no, but yeah, so we here on the Football Fandemic are going to do a little trick or treat special. We're going to do that here in a minute. But before we do, as always, we're going to hit some of kind of the news and headlines that have been going on around the NFL this last week up till today. And I don't know that I have a great list in my head, but I'm just going to throw some stuff out. You guys throw some stuff out. We'll talk about what's happening. We are not going to talk about the Colts and Anthony Richardson until later. So I know that's a headline, guys, but we're going to save that because it's probably going to be a little more in-depth conversation than we're going to do here. So let's start off with Stephon Diggs, Texans receiver, out for the year, right? So
yeah, with a knee injury, I believe.
Yeah, so they've lost him, and they don't have Nico Collins, right? So they're
Tank Dell time.
Scraping. Yeah,
Tank Dell, Robert Woods. They're one of these teams that's probably going to need to make a trade for a receiver, but that receiver market is starting to kind of drain up a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I know we said we're doing the trick or treat special, but we also might hit on a little trade deadline. Will anything happen? Because that's coming up. What? How many days away is that? It's the 5th, so it's like 6 days, 5 days.
Yeah,
it's coming right
Tuesday.
Up. And so
it's coming on Tuesday.
We'll talk about what teams might. Maybe we'll do that here a little later. Talk about what teams might seriously jump in and say, "Hey, we need to trade, and here's why." I don't know who they would get, but we'll talk about that some.
Well, thrown out for the Texans, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. MVS is available as a free agent, and they can pick him up after the trade deadline because of that.
Oh yeah, that's right. It doesn't have to be before that November 5th if they're a free agent, right?
Anytime.
And he's a speed guy and can open things up for Tank Dell a little bit. But I mean, Tank Dell is your number one. I think it's going to be tough, especially now that teams are starting to figure out this Houston offense a little bit, where it's just if you bring them a lot of pressure up the middle, like you can rattle CJ Stroud just a little bit, just enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, and we have seen that. We have seen that the last few weeks. So we'll be looking to see what the Jets think they can do here. I think that's tonight, right? Jets, Houston.
It certainly is.
It is.
Treat. We'll come up to that. Don't answer right now. Don't answer right now. We'll come to that in a bit. What other news is going on? I think Brandon had one called "Bearded Guys Playing in the NFL" or something.
Well, that goes into what we just covered. I have a short section sponsored by Josh Haupt, and so I in honor of that paid sponsorship towards this podcast, I'd like to put out what Josh wanted news-wise to be stated. First thing, Matthew mentioned bearded guys in the NFL. That was in response, as if anyone keeps up with Apple, 18.1, the update is out. It's the first one with public Apple intelligence if you have a certain level of iPhone. And so I have one of those through my work. And I got a text from Josh. We're in a group chat with Matthew. And Josh will just send Twitter links. And so Apple Intelligence went through and read it and gave me a summary of those messages. And it said bearded guys playing football. One of those happened to be the Stephon Diggs injury. And the other one was the Joe Flacco news, which we will hit later. So I won't dig into that. And then there was a comma or semicolon. I don't remember exactly how Apple Intelligence is separating it. So bearded guys playing football, separation. Adam Rank is an idiot. And and I think it was spot on. It was a great summary from Josh. Thank you. Also sponsored by Apple. But Josh did want me to hit a few other notable topics. Longtime
Wait,
listeners.
before you go on, what do you think about this, Josh Kolodziejski, not Josh Haupt? This Adam Rank is an idiot statement.
I think he is a troll. It would be a more fitting term. He or a homer or troll.
He's a Bears fan.
Yes, he's a Bears guy that will always pick the Bears and always troll against the other teams in the NFC North Division, specifically the Green Bay Packers. So, yeah, I mean, he has the Bears no matter what, going like 13-4 every year, and then every other NFC North team going 4-13. So I think there's some self-awareness there, I would hope. If there's not, then we can go with the Adam Rank is an idiot, but I think it's a troll.
I think Josh Haupt sent this in response to him picking the Commanders to have 6 wins total for the year, and they already have 6 wins. And he said, Adam Rank is an idiot.
Hey,
and he showed like the picks and stuff.
I just want to throw this out there. Adam Rank once said the Bears were going to do fantastic 2 or 3 seasons ago. And so he had them winning their first 2 games, right? And then they lost almost every game the rest of the season. And so Bears fans were high as a kite those first 2 weeks. I was getting so many things from Adam Rank. And whenever I've mentioned this so many times, a lot of my family is Bears fans, and Adam Rank is their primary source of Bears news. And they'll text me articles from Adam Rank or video clips or anything. And I'm just like, oh, brother, like, why do I have to waste my time with this guy? But he is, as I call a Bears fan, fans that I tend to be confused on why they choose pain and suffering. I'm not sure, but that is their choice.
I just want to say I love that Apple Intelligence comes up with bearded guys playing football. And Adam Rank.
Which ones? Yeah. A couple other notes on Josh. Longtime listeners of the podcast understand Josh is a Washington Commanders fan through and through, has been his whole life. And he wanted me to hit up on the end of that game just a little bit. Probably what I can say was the most exciting finish that we had this week. I don't think there's another argument beyond that. It was a primetime game. I remember watching it, seeing the Bears get a touchdown with, was it less than 60 seconds left on the clock?
Yeah.
Not much time. And we got Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Tipped by Tyreek Stevenson and then caught by Washington for the touchdown, and the stadium went wild.
I'm going to say something here that Josh Haupt. I keep having to make this because now we have Josh Kolodziejski with us. But Josh Haupt is not going to be a fan of this. Okay, first of all, Washington playing great. Did what they need to do. Jaden Daniels, good player. Yes, I think he is making a case for himself. The end of that game was luck. And the end of that game, they probably should have lost. There was a couple seconds that they got a good bounce, and dude who's supposed to be covering dude in the end zone was Stevenson. What's his name?
Tyreek Stevenson was taunting the fans.
He was too busy. Okay, so that was dumb on the Bears. But the fact that you had to count on a bunch of guys going up, and instead of being able to bat the ball down, it got kind of tipped. They were trying to bat it down, and then this guy just happens to not have the dude covering him who's supposed to be covering. It was luck. And the history books are going to be Bears lost, Commanders win, but it could have absolutely so easily this week been. Caleb Williams he's now making a push for Rookie of the Year. He's growing. Look what he did against the Commanders, who are a tough team, and blah, 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 blah. And it's not going to be that way. It's going to be Jaden Daniels, which I'm a big Jaden Daniels fan. I'm not saying that shouldn't be, but for people to start talking about their dominance based off of we were losing until just the very last second, and maybe time even ran out. I can't remember. That's not dominant. That's not dominant.
They were up the whole game.
I watched the game. I watched it in its entirety. The Colts were up most of the game too and lost by 3. And nobody's talking about the Colts being dominant, right? Because they weren't. And this game was only a 3-point difference also in the end, just like the Colts game. and it was won like off of a lucky tip in the last second. So I'm glad the Commanders got their win, but I think it's going to be a little more overblown than what that performance showed. So, Josh, I love you. Love the Commanders. Love Jaden Daniels. Don't get me wrong on any of that, but I've just heard so many people talking both ways about this game, and it was a super exciting finish. Everybody, so like I was watching it, and I had to like pause it in halftime because of something going on. So I was watching it just a little delayed, and everybody starts sending these text messages. Oh, the end of that Washington game, the end of that. Jaden Daniels is going to be rookie of the year for. And so in my mind, I'm like, he has to do something great, and we're getting to the end, and I'm like, oh, the Bears just scored, and they're up. And so if everybody's talking about him, he has to do something great. He's going to run that as a quarterback run all those yards down the field and get a touchdown, isn't he? Because that would have been like, man, of course he is. But I mean, what he did good was he stepped over to the side and the Bears guy slipped and fell, and he stepped back over and he held it long enough to give them a chance, and then he launched it. With his hurt ribs, yes, he launched it to where it needed to go. And then it was just kind of in the hands of luck from there. And so would that be the thing that makes him the rookie of the year? No, I mean, it was good. And he stayed mentally there. That's good.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot
rookie of
other
the year
things.
is going to be the consistency game to game.
Yeah,
That's
and
what's going to award him.
I think he's going to get that. But
And
No,
he
I-
has shown that up until this point too. He has shown that consistency up until
absolutely. But
I-
people saying that off that end,
Yeah.
that's going to get him that. I'm like, well, no. But
No, it's going to be
It
everything
will
else
be
he's done.
it will be the iconic moment that they show at the
It
NFL
will.
awards.
it
But
is going
yeah,
to be shown over and over.
Yep.
And it already has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the Bears fans so I live in Illinois, all the Bears fans around me are sick of that being shown in all the Twitter feeds. And they just, I came in last night here to a bunch of guys, and they're all just like, they were done with it.
Yeah.
That Hail Mary, by the way, kept the Minnesota Vikings out of last place in the NFC North. So thank you to Jaden Daniels, Luck, and Tyreek Stevenson, and all parties involved.
Yeah.
No, I do have an
man.
additional question
That's
revolving the
crazy.
Hail Mary. I want to ask both of you, just a Hail Mary in general, exclude this game. It seems right now amongst 31 NFL teams, and Josh might know where I'm going with this, they only rush 3 and they send back 7. Now, there was a game, was it last week, where there was a very close game against the Lions, and the opposing team, let's call them Minnesota, needed a Hail Mary, and Detroit rushed 7. Was that 2 weeks ago now?
2
Or
weeks ago, yeah.
they rushed 5 and sent fewer people back to cover, and they got a sack. Is that going to be the smarter play at the end of these games, to send 5 instead of
was
3?
this the sack that was the grabbing of the face mask that yanked? That
No,
the
that
refs
was
didn't see?
that was a different game-ending
Clean
Vikings
sack.
loss.
Clean
I
sack.
saw that. Everybody I know saw that. The ref
Yeah.
standing next to him didn't see it, so I guess it didn't happen.
Yeah, I like sending pressure. I think the one thing you have to be weary of is like kind of a shifty kick returner type guy that can make a lot of guys miss in space. It was like 6 or 7 years ago before halftime of a Chiefs game where Kansas City faced pressure in a Hail Mary situation. They just dumped it off to Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill ran into the end zone because he was just able to make everyone miss from 50 yards out with no time left on the clock. So I think there is like, you have to be weary of that, and kind of have like a hot route or have a guy. But I do think it's the right call, and I think Houston did that against Indianapolis on the last play. They sent a little bit more pressure on Anthony Richardson on that Hail Mary attempt at the end of that one too, and I think that one ended in a sack as well.
Mhm. All right. I got one more point from Josh on this. Surprisingly enough, Josh did not mention Jaden Daniels as Rookie of the Year, but he did mention Dan Quinn for Coach of the Year. Let's talk about that.
I buy that. Yeah.
Heard, go ahead there, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what the Washington Commanders defense was coming into this season with absolutely no cornerbacks, nothing, like nobody that could cover. And we saw through the first couple of weeks, teams were taking advantage of that. through that Bengals game where the teams didn't have a punt that entire game. Since then, though, the corners are guarding a lot better. I'm not sure if it's just schemed differently. I haven't watched like a ton of Commanders defensive film, but like they're not giving up the big plays as much. Like even against the Ravens when they lost that game, there weren't a ton of big plays through the air. It was mostly on the ground. And Dan Quinn, being a defensive guy, I think certainly has had a big role to play. They haven't made any big moves like in terms of personnel since the beginning of the season on the defensive side of the football. So I think certainly he is definitely up there for coach of the year. I think he would probably be him or Matt LaFleur would probably be my pick right now.
Respect.
And yeah, I know that somebody in our group, I can't remember who, was like, "Oh, I might have to talk about Matt LaFleur in that a lot." And Josh wrote back and said, "Yeah, the team that was expected to win their division at the beginning of this year, the or at least be fighting the Lions at that point. Nobody was expecting much from Minnesota, but everybody expected that Green Bay would be great. But who expected Washington to be anything? I think we all expected they would be struggling pretty mightily, and that it would probably be like Dallas or Philly that was the ones winning that division. So there is that he has beat expectations. Matt LaFleur, he's just kind of doing what he always does. As a matter of fact, they for a little bit there, people were unsure if they were even going to do that, but they're doing what they always do. They're hanging in there, and now they've got the same number of wins as everybody else, and they're at the top of the pack, just like they always are. And I don't know. I guess Belichick won several coaches of the year, just kind of doing that, right? Just always being good and being expected. But I think a lot of times for coach of the year, they love to look at this guy that everybody thought nothing was going to happen, and boom, he did great.
Yeah, I think part of the Matt LaFleur argument is the defense and also operating 3 successful wins with Malik Willis under center. Not easy to do, and Malik Willis was not a guy that was turning heads in Tennessee. He was benched for Will Levis. So let's put that out there. They made
a lot of good decisions, though, right? They made a lot of good decisions. They got rid of Derrick Henry. They got rid of Mike Vrabel. Let's not put too much in that organization's brain.
Traded A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks. Yeah.
Right. And so, the Packers defense is leaps and bounds ahead of where they were last season. They're the number 1 defense in the NFL for takeaways at the moment, which last season we were bottom 5. We've already surpassed what we did last year.
I thought last year you were saying defense was scary, going to be scary. I thought I heard that lots and lots of times.
Matthew, you are correct. You've heard that a ton, and every time I have come back to say Joe Barry ruined my expectations, which is 100% true.
It is true.
Jeff Hafley, on the other hand, has exceeded my expectations. He is doing some good stuff back there, and that is a credit towards Matt for Coach of the Year. The improvement on defense, and then just the consistency on offense we knew he had, so that is an expectation. But being able to do it with guys that Matthew, if he was a backup quarterback for the Giants, I don't think you ever would have heard of him. Malik Willis.
I mean, I don't think Malik Willis is really anything to write home about. I think he handed off the ball like a bajillion times and did a couple short passes in his whole time in those games, right?
Well, so this past game is a perfect example. He called an audible at the line of scrimmage, a can, and got Jaden Reed open for a 35-yard pass that got us into field goal range to win the game.
Yeah, and I think having winning with those short passes and with those runs is even more of a credit to Matt LaFleur,
to the coach,
because he's scheming those things open for him. So yeah,
absolutely.
I think right now it's between LaFleur and Dan Quinn. I'm probably forgetting a couple of other ones. I was
just trying to think, is there anybody else around the NFL that the coach is doing a spectacular job? Obviously, DeMeco Ryans may be able to be in that conversation. He, got him further than anybody expected last year. We don't know where they're going to end up this year. They're at 6 wins also, just like everybody else right now. But as the season goes on, what will happen with him? He's, I think, done a great job, first of all, going in there. Last year, I thought there was who won Coach of the Year last year?
Stefanski.
with the Browns.
With the Browns.
And that was a surprise to us.
That was a surprise. I think D'Amico Ryans last year should have won it because you know what people expected last year from the Texans? Absolutely nothing. Because you know who their roster was? A rookie quarterback and who knows who else. Did anybody at that time know Tank Dell or Nico Collins? Absolutely not. I mean, you knew they drafted Will Anderson and CJ Stroud. So you thought, okay, these rookies might make, but nobody knew. There was no star power. There were no big names. There was nothing on that team. And I think they even didn't have the running back they'd had before, right?
I think Damian Pierce was their starter going into last season. Yeah. He was fine the year before, but he was fine.
Right.
Not Joe Mixon.
Superstar. And so I think last year he should have won, but we'll see. Maybe he gets in that conversation by the end of this, but you're right. I think right now we're looking at those two, unless you can think of another.
I'm still hard on the train, and this depends on if this organization continues their dominance for Dan Campbell. I love
Dan Campbell.
I love Dan Campbell. I think he should have gotten it a couple of years ago. But in his argument, if they continue to dominate with 50+ point wins, I don't see how you couldn't have him in the conversation.
What's his face?
Without Aiden Hutchinson.
Aiden Hutchinson, right? Right. Like if they continue to defensively stop people and put up these great offensive numbers. Yeah.
I just want to hear his name in the conversation. I don't want to disrespect Dan Campbell like that. He has done phenomenal things. And I understand Coach of the Year is not a 5-year outlook of what they've done with the organization. If it was, I would say Dan Campbell is the easy choice for that position. I understand it's year by year, but if they put up, let's just say 5 more games throughout the rest of the season, we got 7 or 8 games left.
They play somebody spectacular this week, right?
Yeah, 2 of those games will be super close.
What if this week is a big blowout, like another 52-14, like you just did the Titans? Oh,
I won't be on next week.
We will be down one host. Oh man, I'm going to wait on that. But is there any more news stuff? We talked kind of Coach of the Year idea. Any other?
Yeah, Deontay Johnson got traded to the Ravens.
Right.
So that gives Lamar Jackson another weapon, and it comes right on the heels of Rashad Bateman dropping like a wide open pass in the sun during that loss to the Browns.
I just want to, you know what? The games this weekend, I was telling Brandon just before we started, there were so many games decided by 2 or 3 points. And some of them were like, so not what you expected, and some of them even more than 2 or 3 points. It was just not what was expected. But that Browns over Ravens, oh man, that was one I did not expect.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody did. But Jameis Winston got it done. And then the Vikings, they traded their starting left tackle Christian Darrisaw is out for the year, so they traded for Jacksonville's starting left tackle Cam Robinson. So now they have at least a guy that's not going to be a complete Olay man. They're protecting. He's not Christian Darrisaw, but he'll help him out. He'll give Sam Darnold a little bit of time. That's nice.
I do want to talk about another piece. I don't think we talked about it last week. Stop me if we did. Deshaun Watson and an intriguing trade to Carolina. It would be Deshaun Watson and a 1st-round pick to Carolina for, I'm not exactly sure what they would want, but they also have to take on his contract. Yeah, which frees up Carolina to do that. I
just don't see how anybody is like, you know what? I want Deshaun Watson. It's not like he's looked great these last 3 years.
No, but they want to be. They would essentially get him and cut him. But they're getting a 1st-round pick to take on his cap.
So kind of like what the Lions and Rams did in that Matthew Stafford trade.
Correct.
Let's go with a better example. Didn't Broncos in Houston do something with what's his name?
Brock Osweiler, yeah.
Brock Osweiler. That was buying a 1st-round pick, basically. It's like, okay, we'll take Brock and this, we'll pay this. And then they cut him, right?
Yeah, I think I don't think he ever. If they didn't cut him, he never started any games. I don't think for them. So yeah, I mean, you could do that, but like this is even more of a financial burden than Brock Osweiler's or Jared Goff's contract.
Yeah, it'd be, I think, 175 million they would have to take
And
on.
how many more years? I mean, it's all guaranteed. So how many more years
Mm-hmm.
is left on that? That's going to be something that can hinder you're getting a first round pick, but you're not getting a great quarterback, and you're now handicapping yourself from building a competitive team at all over the next however many years is left in that contract. Like I think it would need to be like multiple first round picks to even like move the needle if I'm Carolina. That being said, their owner is one of the more wild cards in the NFL, so who knows?
Yeah, and I know we'll likely hear this in the comments from millions of people, but there is a trade issue in the NFL where you can't trade an injured player, right? Which is Deshaun Watson's currently injured. So that's the argument you would hear, but there are back alley ways to forego a physical and get a player on a team. And there's a bunch of paperwork that has to be done, but it's not impossible to trade him away while he's injured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have interest in it.
Yeah, you're buying and cutting. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I was trying to look back at what the money part of the Brock Osweiler trade was, because I feel like it was
a big deal. It was a big deal.
I mean, I think it was over 100 million. Maybe not 175, but that's all it's left on Deshaun Watson. So it is that kind of injured thing right now. That's the difference. But I personally, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. I mean, but I'm not going to put anything past Dave Tepper, because he's made bad decision after bad decision there in Carolina. Also, just nothing's looked good.
So they might have the first overall pick from the Carolina pick. We still don't know for sure, but they're 1-7, so they're going to have a high pick. Cleveland is currently 2-6. They look much better with Jameis Winston, and so they might have.
You got the Titans at 1.
Well, they're still early in the season, right? I mean, the Titans and Panthers, I think both of them are going to be top 5 picks. I don't think that's that's debatable. They'll both have a top 5 pick. Cleveland, depending on how the rest of their season shakes out, they could have a top 10 pick. And so now, what is that worth to you? Let's assume they get 1 and also have 8. What is that worth? 2 young guys, rookie contracts. You can add a 5th-year option to them.
Yeah.
Which would go beyond Deshaun Watson's contract.
So you could get like one of the top quarterbacks. I don't know if this quarterback class is great. The wide receiver class is really, really good. So you could get yourself like a dynamic duo like the Bears have tried to do this season. But still, like, you're not going to really be able to build any other part of your team for a while outside of doing that in the draft. So, like, I mean, if you get like Cam Ward and Ted McMillan, that like kind of moves the needle a little bit, but I don't know at this point. I think that's putting a lot of faith in those 2 draft picks, and Carolina hasn't had the best history over the last couple of years in scouting and drafting quarterbacks with Bryce Young. So I would just be, if I'm the Panthers, I'm saying no.
Yeah, luckily I don't have to make that decision. I'm not a Panthers fan. I don't have to get invested in that at all.
We can ask Brian. He's a member of our fantasy football league who is a Panthers fan. We'll get his opinion. I've got one more piece of information before we can move on.
Okay.
A new call for a 3rd-string quarterback in Pittsburgh. I don't know if either of you saw this. Is Justin Fields, now 3rd-stringer, previous starter in Pittsburgh. He was on the roster as 3rd-string quarterback this past week.
What do you think is going on there?
I don't know. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not wanting to roll the long-term dice with Russell Wilson. I'm wanting to roll the short-term dice with Russell Wilson. Like, hey, you're doing great for us right now. We want to see how Fields is developing. We kind of want Fields to be here next 6 or 7 years, right, as their starting quarterback. That being said, Russell has balled out. while he's played. And so he's making the decision really hard for them. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure the full decision to put Fields as third string quarterback. Like he was still playing really well. He was understanding the offensive system. You still got some classic Justin Fields moments out of him. And so I'm not entirely sure the decision there. But
Let me
is
ask
Justin
this.
Fields, they're
Let me
trying
ask
to
this.
trade him, maybe?
Was there any conditional things with Justin Fields? He was a 6th round. Was there a condition that, like, if he played so many games, or if they won so many games, or
He would
if
go
he
to a
was on the
fourth or
roster,
something.
if he was on the active roster, like this many,
Maybe.
and maybe they're like, hey, we know we're gonna go with Russell Wilson this year because of what we've seen now these last 2 games. We're gonna pull him down, and then he's gonna be in next year, but we're gonna put this other dude up there just to make sure compensation works out for us. And maybe they've told him that. I
Yeah,
would think
perhaps.
they would have to talk to him about this and say, listen, we know this is hard right now, but we see you as our future. We want you to develop. We want you to pay attention to what Russ is doing. We want you to get better. We're doing this because of this. You know, it seems like they would have to be talking to him. Otherwise, there's this whole, like, you know, because he's just a 1 year right now.
Both
Unless they
of
sign.
them are. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's got to sign a longer term deal. And if he doesn't like the team, he's not going to do that if he doesn't feel included in that communication. So it's hard for me to know exactly what's going on there, but Pittsburgh's always been like a vault. You know, they don't tell anybody what they're thinking. They just kind of do their thing. And I love that. As a fan, I wish that's the way all Colts things work. Like, nobody knows anything that's going on except the Colts.
And if you think, Mike Tomlin knows like the perfect timing of making these decisions. He cut ties with Le'Veon Bell at the right time. He cut ties with Antonio Brown at the right time. So like he knows when like he's been around long enough where like you kind of just have to trust the decision that he's making, I feel like, because he's more often correct in those than he is incorrect. And honestly, I don't really think either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields are the long-term. I don't think in Tomlin's mind that either of those guys are the long-term guys for the Steelers franchise, especially with like, again, this quarterback draft class. You can get, it's not going to be like this one where we had 6 going the first 12 picks. You can get the 3rd best or 4th best quarterback in the middle rounds and build around him. And then I don't know who's up for free agency, but there'll be some guys that they can try to build around. And this is a team that has made the playoffs with like Kenny Pickett throwing the football or like, and Mason Rudolph getting significant. So like, I'm fine. I mean, Kyle Allen, Justin Fields, I don't know what if there's there's differences in the way that they play. I don't know if there's going to be a difference in the results if Russell Wilson goes down between the two of those guys.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on Pittsburgh and what the heck is going on there. But it looks like for the rest of this season, we got Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields is being saved for something, or maybe they're like Brandon said, maybe they're trying to like get some interest in trading him.
Trade market.
You think if they were doing that, they would have been playing him, but I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, here's what we want to do. This is the trick or treat edition, and I want to look both at last week games and just kind of recap those, and then kind of ultimately decide, was that a trick that team won, or was that the treat that we all can look forward to for the rest of this year? And then we'll do the same with the games coming up. We're going to look at them and decide which ones are going to be a treat and which ones could potentially end up being that little hard candy that tastes like coffee that you always got when you were trick or treating. You're like, what's this? Where's the candy bar? I got this like rum coffee flavored hard candy. This is a trick.
Or I got a toothbrush.
Or a toothbrush. That's anti-Halloween right there.
Yeah, that's every kid's dream, is to get a toothbrush and toothpaste for Halloween.
And an apple. They put a toothbrush and an apple in your bag. You're like, what are you, a dentist?
I got a rock.
All right, so I'm gonna name a game. You guys tell me your thoughts, trick or treat, on this. We're gonna start right. We're just kind of go through in order. Rams Vikings. I'm gonna say, first of all, man, I did not see this coming. I thought there is no way the Rams are going to beat the Vikings. We had Josh Haupt that we keep referring to. He's like, hey, if the Vikings lose and Detroit loses, Washington can take over number 1 in the NFC. And we're like, there is no way either one of those things are going to happen.
Half of it happened.
My goodness.
Yeah,
So
half of it happened.
what do you guys think about this Rams Vikings game? This was the one, by the way, with the yanked face mask,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Tell us about it, Josh.
So the caveat here is like when it comes to Thursday night and international games, my like rule of thumb is don't take much stock in whatever happened and just try to get the win. Like if it's a win ugly, just get it. Like I don't find like trend lines from Thursday night games and international games just because they're so out there in terms of getting players out of their routine. I don't think the Vikings' lack of pass rush in that game is going to be a trend. I think that was a result of playing on a short week after going up against the Detroit Lions offensive line and just being like completely out there. I am worried about their ability to cover guys in man coverage because we're starting to see teams these last 2 weeks with the Lions and the Rams motion a lot more than the Vikings have seen. And then in the past, the Vikings, in like the first 4 games of the season, they were playing a lot of zone. The last 2 or 3 weeks, they've been going a lot more to man with their cornerbacks. And that motion has been confusing them and causing them to kind of get out of play. So I think that is a treat in terms of moving forward. I think they need to go back to play more zone, especially against the teams that like to motion wide receivers around a lot. And then I think the offense also is treat in that way because now you don't have your starting left tackle, even as we mentioned with Cam Robinson coming over. He's not Christian Darrisaw, and Sam Darnold holds on to the ball forever and he's decisive with his reads, but he's slow with those reads. And that's going to give teams more time to get pressure on him. So I think the 6 points that we saw from Minnesota after the first 2 touchdown drives is a treat. Lack of pass rush, trick. Man coverage and offensive stuff, treat.
And I just want to say this. I think it was last week or maybe the week before, we were talking about the NFC North as being like the best and closest division in football, right? I think we had 5, 5, 5, and 4 with the number of wins. There was I think that it's not accuracy. That's where you're trying to hit the bullseye, but precision, where you hit all together. I think that has moved to the NFC West, right? Because now we have Cardinals at 4-4, 49ers at 4-4, Seahawks at 4-4, Rams at 3-4. They're only separated by 1 game of one team. Yep. They're tightly grouped, more so than the NFC North, which is now 6 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins. As you go down that, so
the NFC North is I think still a powerhouse. It's the only division where everyone's above 500.
It's still stronger.
Yeah,
it's still more accurate, but not as tight.
It's not as close.
Precision, right?
Which for me feels good as a Packers fan, and I can make the argument that this Vikings game was a treat because with the Vikings loss, it put the Packers in second place in the NFC North. So it's now the Lions at 6-1, the Packers at 6-2, and Minnesota at 5-2. And I think that's because you had a bye week in there. The Packers haven't hit their bye week yet, which obviously will even out by the end of the season.
I just think it's crazy what Josh said earlier in this. He said that the fact that the Bears lost was like a blessing because otherwise, if the Bears would have won, the Vikings would have went from first place to fourth place in 1 week.
And then we would have 6-6-5-5.
Yeah.
Wins.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy.
Thank you, Jaden Daniels.
Thank you, Jaden Daniels, for that game. All right. We already kind of commented on this. Ravens Browns by 5 points, 29-24. Browns beat Ravens. I think that was a trick.
Yeah, trick as well. We talked about last week. Jameis Winston is going to stumble you into some wins and lose your opportunity to get the first round or the first overall pick. And I think that was a result of that. If it trends forward, great for Cleveland. They can maybe make a run, but I don't trust Jameis Winston week in, week out.
It gave the Browns 2 wins. They're pulling themselves out of that first overall pick. But the Ravens, you just think the Ravens should have had enough firepower to move beyond even Jameis Winston. Even Jameis Winston, as if he's like a juggernaut. and he's not.
No.
It was such a trick. I don't think anybody in the nation expected that. I think if you know how they do those picks, it would have been all Ravens across the board, but that's not what happened. The next one, I think probably everyone got right, and that is Lions versus Titans. 52-14 was the end score. Lions thrashed the Titans. Absolutely thought that would happen. I think it
What
was
a treat.
Also, we hate the AFC South except for the Colts. Oh, wait, did I say it? We are glad the Titans have lost. I think they are indeed tanking this season also, but Lions did what they had to do. I don't think you guys are going to disagree with me on that.
No, that's treat. That's treat all the way.
Texans Colts, a 3-point game. Texans win it over the Colts. I'm just going to say this: the Colts did not play offensive football well at all in that game, and so many places. There's just so much I could talk about with this game. might as well just get into it. First of all, Anthony Richardson was 2 of 15, which everybody has heard over and over in the first half, right? Two completions out of 15 attempts, which is historically bad. And they talked about it. And I will say this, he wasn't throwing accurately, but I will also say there were several balls that should have been caught that our receivers are not helping him at all. Yeah. Our receivers looked so bad. I look at Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce and way more AD Mitchell. He keeps getting the ball thrown to him, and I've seen so few completions to him. It's just annoying. Josh Downs, it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. The defense was doing what it needed to do against the Texans. They were doing that thing, making C.J. Stroud very uncomfortable, and it showed just what you were talking about, a lot of pressure on him. I believe it was a totally winnable game. There is the whole, let's just get into Anthony Richardson tapped himself out in the third quarter, right? It was going to be a handoff anyway. It was like a third and super long, right? And anyway, I think the media is overblowing this. I think everybody else in the world is more concerned about it than the Colts. Yes, the Colts don't want to see that. You heard Shane Steichen say, "Yeah, I talked to him about that. You can't do that." You did hear Ryan Kelly, the center, saying he's young, but he needs to know that's not the way you do it. He'll grow. He's young, and you heard every one of the teammates defending him. Zaire Franklin's like, no, he's our starter going forward, 100%. He's going to be our future. You heard as they went through the locker room, Josh Downs. I mean, just everybody was like, no, we don't. We're not mad at Anthony Richardson because of that. Yeah, he does need to still learn. I think they all understand he has 10 starts and he only had 6 starts he had 13. In college?
13 in college.
6 in high school. Yeah, go ahead.
To that point, even Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores was asked about it, and he said the same thing. Like, it's not a bit like, did you watch the play? He was shaking off defenders. I'd be gassed too. Like he's a guy that's traditionally hard on quarterbacks, like to the point where Tua Tagovailoa had a whole article come out about how rough Brian Flores was with him in Miami. So he even was like, Anthony, I mean, maybe that's just the respectful public talk that he's putting out, but he's like, no, I get it. You don't see it a lot with quarterbacks, but you also don't see quarterbacks shaking off 300-pound guys and then running around like 60 yards in the field before getting no gain before third and forever.
Yeah. So they benched him for Joe Flacco. So the question that probably is that I've had to face a lot is this the right decision? Are they done with Anthony Richardson? I even heard Colts people okay, the top 5 trades that we might make for Anthony Richardson. I'm like, calm down, y'all. I don't think we're done with Anthony Richardson. So I'm just going to say this. I'm going to put this little graphic up on the screen here. Let's see if I can do this here. This was a comparison put out by CBS Sports of the first 10 games of Josh Allen's career and Anthony Richardson's career. You can see pass touchdowns, 7 each. Rush touchdowns, he had 1 less. Turnovers, he had 2 less than Josh. Josh had 2 more. Their rating, he was better than Josh Allen. His completion percentage, right around the same. Win-loss, better than Allen in the first 10 starts. Now, am I saying that Anthony Richardson is going to be Josh Allen? No, I'm not. Josh Allen had a lot more experience, but he came in raw. I think I'm a little confused as to what exactly is going on with this benching because at the beginning of this year, everybody actually just a month ago, both Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen were asked about Anthony Richardson, and they both made the statement, we knew he was raw, he's going to take time to develop, and we are committed to giving him that time to develop. And then this benching. I think there's something else going on. I'm not exactly sure what. I personally, I don't think going to Joe Flacco is the right move because let's say Joe Flacco wins. Let's say we get 9 and 10. I think they're maybe even hoping we can get to the playoffs, whatever. But we get to the playoffs. I don't think Joe Flacco is going to take us to the Super Bowl. I think we're going to get knocked out in the first or second round because he is a pretty stationary guy. Yeah, he can throw accurately. He can make those throws, but he's not our future, and he's not going to get us he's going to get us right in the middle of the pack as far as a draft pick. We're not going to go all the way to the NFC or the AFC championship game. We're obviously not going to be getting around a first round pick. So what he does is he just puts us dead center of that pack or late in the first round. And then we're doing this whole thing again next year where we're putting Anthony Richardson in, and he hasn't had the reps and he hasn't had what he needs. I know it's hard right now. It's hard to be a Colts fan and watch Anthony go out there. Now, the only thing I can think is they're saying mentally, maybe he's about to break here. And this is too much for him. We need to give him a breather and let him hit reset. And I've heard that, kind of said around all comments in the league. Maybe that's it. They're going into Minnesota in prime time, and that could be psyching out. Minnesota has not been a bad defense at all. They've had an interception in like every game or 5 of the 6 or something like that, right?
Yep.
Maybe it's not the best place for Anthony, but I kind of heard them say right now, Joe Flacco is it going forward. I think that's a mistake. I think he needs to get in there and take his lumps. If he's having trouble with confidence, maybe you take him out for a game or two. We saw Bryce Young go out for a couple games and come back. It can happen, but I think Anthony Richardson needs to be the one. And then what you're either going to get is we're going to do bad and we're going to get a better draft pick. Or he's going to get better. If he doesn't get better, then we'll at least know he's not going to get better and he's not our guy. But we need to know. And so Colts right now kind of have me a little bit unsure of what they're doing, why they're doing it. And there's just been a lot of craziness in that. Steichen said this was his decision to make. I really feel there might have been some Jim Irsay in there. I don't know. But he can't say that. He can't go up and say, yeah, Jim told me I had to do this. Yeah, you can't do that. But the fact that none of the players even knew until they heard it on the news, it was a player's day off. But you think as a head coach, you would say to to Michael Pittman Jr., to Josh Downs, to some of these receivers, to maybe the offensive line, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take him out for a week or two. We just want you guys to know this news is going to break. It seems like you could make those calls. It seems like people in your organization, you have some people who could make those calls. And so that was odd that Michael Pittman's like, I found out on the news, and everybody did. And I don't know. I don't think the team's turned against him. I don't even know where Steichen is exactly. I think there might be some pressure. All this to say, I don't think the big tapping out in the third, I think that was an immature move. He's a young kid. I think he can be told, hey, you don't do that. And maybe you take him out for a game and say, listen, everybody here has got to know that they've got to give their 100%. And if they don't, it's going to have consequences. And we need to show them like that happens to you too. We can't show them there's an exception to that. And they tell Anthony Richardson that. It's like, hey, this is your consequences. This is where you need to be. You don't tap out. But I don't think that it's such a big deal that we're like, okay, now we're trading Anthony Richardson. We're done with him and all this stuff that's getting overblown. And it's funny how nobody hardly paid attention to the Colts this year, but we just got very little talk until all of a sudden this week. And it's like now there's not a media outlet that can't stop talking about the Colts. Relax, everybody.
Hey, drama sells, Matthew. Drama sells.
And so for Josh Haupt, who commented, I hate that he gave up on his team. I don't know that he was giving up on his team. I think he was flustered. I think he's young. I think he's immature. And he came right back in. It was a handoff play anyway. He came right back in, finished the game. He did not give up on his team. I don't feel like that. I don't think the team feels like that. I think they're all like, hey, bud, you can't take yourself out for being tired. You know, we are all playing every snap.
From Josh's perspective, just because he's going to ask me to clear this for him later, it was not Josh's comments. It was the VP of his company's comments that he was sharing with us.
No,
so
he was from Indiana. Relax. VP from the company. I don't know his name. If you're watching, hey, I'm glad you and Josh are getting along, and I'm glad you're a Colts fan, but
relax. I do like this move by the Colts because I think the one thing that Anthony Richardson isn't doing well in is something that you can't really work on with game reps. I think he reads the defense well, and that's something that you are going to be best at in game reps. I think he maneuvers the pocket well already, and I think that's something that those game reps, that's what develops most in game reps. I think you are wanting him to become more accurate with the football, and if he becomes more accurate with the football, you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL with Anthony Richardson, with his arm talent, with his ability to move, with his ability to read defenses. I think that's something that requires use of his practice time to be focused heavily on just his mechanics of throwing the football, working on the footwork and the arm angles and all of that. I don't know all of the, quarterback guru stuff of that, but like being a more accurate passer, I think is a little bit more difficult to get when you're spending the week game planning for whatever your opponent is. Like practice during the week, you're not working on that sort of stuff. You're working on, okay, what are the plays that we're running? Let's practice these plays. Let's get these plays down. You're not working on, okay, let's get these fundamentals down and work on being more pinpoint accurate. I think that's the only thing that Anthony Richardson isn't really doing well as a quarterback at the NFL level. And it's a big thing, but it's something that I think getting him off of those first team game plan sort of reps in practice and just kind of working him off on the side to get those like accuracy things and just hammer in those fundamentals. He wasn't able to do that last year when he missed time because he was injured. So he wasn't able to work on that. Now you give him a time to kind of like he's taken his lumps in that way already so far this season. And now he can get a couple of weeks where he can just kind of work on that, get that muscle memory going. I don't know how long it will take for him to become an accurate player, but like you put up the Josh Allen comparison, that was the only thing Josh Allen really needed to work on in order to be at the level where he is right now. So I do like that they are giving him that time now, and they'll be able to see in practice if he's able to make those accurate reads. And later in the season, you thrust him back into the starting lineup, and now you see if he can, or not accurate reads, accurate throws. Now you see if he can do that with the pressure barreling down on him and put it all together once again. I will be worried if they don't put him in towards the end of the season, 4 or 5 games left. I would be a little bit worried because that might mean, okay, the accuracy issues still haven't been solved by just hammering it out for weeks and weeks and weeks. But I think that move gives them the opportunity to do that. And then Joe Flacco, the hope is, can, win you a couple of games and keep you in the playoff race by the time they're done in the workshop with Anthony Richardson.
I could get behind that. That whole perspective. I could agree with that. Even if it went like really late in the year, and then we see him. I could get behind that. So it does worry me about like, okay, are we wasting a year? But you do have to find out, can he get more accurate? And that's the question we have to answer. And I know that as a Colts fan, I've already heard, well, if we can just do bad next year, you know where I'm going, right? Who here can guess?
You just push it down the road,
Arch Manning is exactly what everybody's saying. It's like, well, if we do bad next year and we can get the first overall pick, well, okay. I don't hope for that.
You don't want to do bad.
Arch Manning has not looked great in his relief for Quinn Ewers. And granted, he's only a sophomore, but he hasn't looked like fantastic with Texas when he's been given the chance to be out there against good teams.
And I'm not going to lie, just because Peyton Manning was here doesn't mean Arch Manning wants to go here. It's not like he's like, oh, I'm going to declare because Indy's at the top.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Willie, because, Peyton, I love Peyton. I hate the fact that he won a Super Bowl with the Broncos and now they have as much claim as we do. It's just not right.
Matthew, I think that's something in common you have with Giants fans because they're like, oh, if we could just get Arch. We had Eli. If we could just get Arch. And I understand Peyton and Eli are different. They're brothers, and this is their nephew. So they have like equal reign over him. It's not one of their children, which would be different if it was like Peyton's son is right there. But it's his nephew. It's his brother's son.
It's Cooper's son.
And yeah. And so the Giants are doing the same thing right now. The Giants are, by any stretch of the imagination, not doing hot. And next season might also not do hot. Now, we can't predict what's going to happen next season, except the Chiefs will probably win a bunch of games. And that's it.
By the way, we'll get to that game. We'll get to the Chiefs here in a second. Let's move on down. I will say this. I don't think the team's like just had it with Anthony Richardson. I don't know exactly who's calling the shot here between Steichen and Jim Irsay and what's going on there. I started to read a conspiracy theory today that somebody had that was pretty involved. It was like made you think of Charlie Day standing in front of his board. Did you guys ever watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I know the meme that you're talking about. Yeah,
standing in front of the wall with all the strings. Anyway, it was I didn't get to finish it, but they were making some deep dives into what happened with Peyton Manning in his third or fourth year, and Jim Moore, and what happened with Andrew Luck and Pagano, and now what's happening with Steichen. So I'm going to read it. Maybe I'll get back to y'all about it. Maybe. Let's move on. Packers Jaguars. This is another 3-point game. They only won by as much as the Colts lost by. They only won by as much as the Bears lost by, as the Commanders won by 3 points. But I would have expected them to do much better than this. I was a little flabbergasted that the Jaguars got 27 points on this scary, scary, scary defense that has been so vaunted. Come on, Packers, put those Jaguars in their place. But at least there's a win there. What do you think of this, though, as a trick or treat?
A treat for me, obviously. Any win is going to be a treat in my book. Might be ugly. I will admit that. Jordan Love also did not play the whole game. Malik Willis came in and finished the game for us. But Trevor Lawrence he kicked into second gear, and it's some of the best he's looked all season. Now, I do not believe that was a fault of the Packers secondary by any stretch of the imagination. I think it was like one of those times where the quarterback is just really freaking good and it's hard to stop them. And we know he's had flashes of that. And I think that's one of these flashes. I know he's not like that week to week, because if he was, it's hard to imagine they would have had back-to-back first-round picks. It's hard to imagine they'd miss the playoffs most seasons.
Hard to imagine they would only
a
have
bunch of stuff.
2 wins.
Yeah. And so I think what you saw was really, really good flashes of Trevor Lawrence. I don't think it was down on the defense by any stretch of my imagination. Now, the Packers were able to adjust and continue adjusting on defense, which is what you need to do. We still know our biggest weakness is the run game. Tank's Big Three just tanked us, right? And so that's not a fault of him. We did have a few turnovers in that game, which I was talking about was the big difference Matt LaFleur had made in his coaching decision this past season for firing Joe Barry, bringing in Jeff Hafley. We had an interception by Xavier McKinney, someone that I would love to see become the defensive player of the year. I don't think it's been a corner in a long time. I think it's usually been like a defensive end for the past, 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in there.
Sauce Gardner.
He got defensive rookie of the year. That's what he got. But it was like Myles Garrett last year. TJ Watt's been in the conversation for all of it. It's been harder for the secondary players to get it because offenses are getting smarter, Matthew, with the Shanahan offensive tree spreading throughout the league, and just not throwing the ball towards really, really good secondary players. And so we haven't had, I think we've had 1 10 interception season. It was Xavier Howard for, I think, Miami 4 years ago, this decade. And so it's getting fewer and fewer. Offenses are getting smarter. He has 6 interceptions now in the season. He has a sack. A number of tackles for a loss, and quarterback ratings are in the 30s when you're throwing towards him. So really, really good safety that we have. I want to see him in that talk for Defensive Player of the Year. I imagine we will see him in the talk. I don't know if he'll get it. That's a different discussion. And then we also had a strip sack on Trevor Lawrence during the game in an area where Trevor really needed to perform. And so coming up in tight moments is really what's going to define your defense, and we were able to do that and just hold them off just barely. I know not all wins are going to be pretty, as we saw through most of the games this week, but it was a win. We got it. We're able to move on to the next team, which is Detroit, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit to see how we can try to not fumble everything. But a treat for me.
Very good. Do you have any thoughts on that Packers game, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's both teams played about what you'd expect. Like the Jaguars are bad on defense. They have a pretty good offense. And it was that way. And I think the only reason it wasn't more of a bigger Packers win was because Malik Willis he played really well. But I think like everyone played to about, for me, what I would expect in that game. So I'll say treat on both accounts.
Next one was a 1-point differential. Cardinals beating the Dolphins by 1 point, 28-27. Tua was back, right?
Tua was back. And it was the most points that the Dolphins have scored this year. And I think both of these teams are about pretty much the same. The Dolphins might typically have a better defense than the Cardinals most week. I'll go trick a little bit just because I think we're going to see a even better Tua moving forward in the season. It was his first game back from a pretty bad concussion, so he probably wasn't like 100%. But I mean, I think this Cardinals like offense, it's definitely a treat for them. I think that is not a mirage. I think once you get Marvin Harrison Jr. involved a lot more, then the offense becomes even better, and it allows Kyler Murray to do a lot of things over the middle. Like Marvin Harrison's your outside guy, and then the rest of the Cardinals receivers are small guys that go over the middle, like Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson. And you need to be able to have Marvin Harrison Jr. as a threat, and they hadn't shown that outside of one game up to this point. In order to keep defenses honest, in order to keep them from just flooding the middle with their linebackers. So I think the fact that they got Marvin Harrison involved, I think they're going to continue trending to do that on the offensive side of the football, and then that'll open up things for everybody, including James Conner, who's just like old reliable, old faithful. Just he's the Mike Evans of running backs. I feel like he just gets it done.
Yeah, I was gonna make a comment about the Dolphins. I'm gonna actually hold that for this next game, and that is a Jets-Patriots game where the Patriots win by 3 points again. We're seeing another 3-point win over the Jets. And we already got a quick trick here.
Trick. Oh my gosh. Hold on. I need to find this stat and pull it up. Give me like 2 minutes.
While he's taking his 2 minutes, I'm going to point this out. Who would have thought at this point in the year that the AFC East would have 3 teams with only 2 wins at all? So the Bills at 6 wins, man, they're running away with this. We thought maybe there would be some competition from the Dolphins, maybe from the Jets. I don't know that we had too many of us thinking the Patriots would be competition, but so far, nothing. Bills are running away with the AFC East with Dolphins at 2, Patriots at 2, Jets at 2.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
So here's the trick. There's a few conditions for this to be found, and Josh Haupt and I were talking about this Monday at 10 p.m. I'll tell you the exact time. In the NFL, since the Super Bowl era has started, including the playoffs, if a team scored 20-plus points, had no turnovers, and the defense held the opposing offense to fewer than 250 yards, they have won 750 games. This is the one time in the Super Bowl era this has not happened. that record is now officially 750-1. And the Jets are that one, which is to me a trick, because you have this data where, yeah, we scored 20 plus points. We never turned the ball over, and our defense held the opposing offense to fewer than 250 yards. As a coach, just looking at those stats, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like a pretty good game, right? And it's the only time in the Super Bowl era where it's resulted in a loss, including the playoffs. And so for me, that is the trick. We talked about it, having Devontae Adams on this offense. Maybe it's just he's not warmed up. Yeah, you could probably use the excuse of, well, his hamstring isn't 100%. He's like 85%. I just think there's a ton of stuff going on with the Jets right now where nothing is firing on any cylinder. Your engine's about to explode. And they realistically, for them to have a shot at the playoffs, I think they need to win out the season. I don't think they can afford another loss.
Yeah,
I know. And they play tonight, and I know we're going to get to that game. But just for them to make the playoffs, they need to, and it can be ugly. It doesn't need to be pretty wins. They can get pretty wins in the playoffs if they make it, but they can have ugly wins all the way up until there. That's all they need is ugly wins. And I'm not sure how they're going to manage that.
Yeah.
I also am not sure that they are going to manage that. Josh?
Yeah, no, I think it is treat for the Jets. I think this is who they are now. Like they started off the season 2-1 and then just continue to lose and continue to make decisions that every week it seems like a big thing has changed. The head coach has changed. They have a new star wide receiver. They have their edge rusher back. There's no like consistency. There's no time to give anybody any sort of chemistry. And I get the stat that it was just a fluky loss in that way. So I agree the game itself, the Jets would win that game a lot more often than they lose. But I think that it's like, this is who they are. This is what they're going to continue to do. Yeah, it's cursed or something. For the Patriots, I think trick. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is going to be leading too many game-winning drives. And if it was Drake May, I would say perhaps treat. But he got injured with a concussion early in the game. I don't think if it's Jacoby Brissett back there, that is a game that the Patriots win too often.
Definitely not the outcome I expected. I thought the Jets would have it more together and there would be a win there. So crazy. How about Falcons, Buccaneers? Oh my. Kirk Cousins comes in and says, we're fighting for this division and I'm going to put up a fight.
This is my treat, 100%. And I talked about this last week. This was my marquee game to watch. And I still stand by that. I think if you were going to watch only one game this week, except for the Lions game, if you wanted to see just a total team performance, it would have been this game. Just a treat all around for football fans.
Yep, I agree. I think Baker Mayfield is about going to perform to that baseline without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and like a good but not great stat line that we were seeing earlier in the year. And this Falcons offense really is starting to come together a little bit more.
Just want to say, a few weeks ago when we were talking about who we thought was going to take this division, one guy here said Falcons. That guy's sitting in my chair. All right. Let's move on to the next game here. What do we got? Eagles over the Bengals, 37-17. It's not a 3-point game here. Did you guys expect Eagles over Bengals? Was this a trick or was this a treat?
Go ahead, Josh.
I'll go treat. The Bengals defense has been like bad all season, except when they've played against the Giants. And then I forgot who they played the week prior to this one. But when they've played a competent offense and a competent quarterback, they've been bad. And their offense has kind of been stuck in a rut a little bit the last 3 weeks as well. And I think the Eagles offense is that good. I think when you have AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and Saquon Barkley, like Jalen Hurts has his lumps and like he has his problems, but he's willing to throw to those guys in single coverage even when they're covered. And like AJ Brown is one of the best at just coming down with those and creating a little bit of separation at the end of the route so that he can catch that. And then we saw Devonta Smith do that too against Cincinnati. So I think like this is about where I didn't expect the Eagles to beat the Bengals that badly by what was a 20-point loss.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of sums up who both of these teams are.
Yeah, I have a treat for this as well, and we talked about it coming into the season, Matthew, where we thought the Eagles were going to be much better than they really were, and then they got hit with injury after injury after injury after injury, which just gutted their offense. But now you got AJ Brown back, you got Devonta Smith back, Saquon Barkley is looking like Saquon freaking Barkley, man.
Yeah.
And so if you're an Eagles fan, this is definitely a treat. This is the offense you were expecting coming into the season, and they probably had this one marked on their calendar. I know I do when I have like prime AFC matchups. Packers Texans was one of those. I'd mark it on my calendar. I'm like, ooh, the Bengals are they're a solid team. Now the Bengals have, let the NFL down so far this season, and so they're not what we expected. But the Eagles are. I think it would have been much more exciting if Bengals are living up to our hype a little bit more. And Josh had mentioned a lot of that has to do with their defense. And there's also no talk about benching Joe Burrow, by the way. They're not going to bring in some veteran and start him over Joe Burrow. Let's call that veteran Andy Dalton, just because of the irony right there. They're sticking with Joe Burrow. We like Joe Burrow. We're big fans of him historically on this podcast, and I think we still are.
By the way, I saw like a little video, kind of jumping to veteran quarterback. And they were talking to Joe Flacco. They're like, how do you keep coming in and like saving teams? He's like, well, it's pretty easy. I just look at a team whose quarterback isn't that good and isn't living up to what they should be. And I go sign there. It's not a mistake. Did it with the Browns, did it with the Colts. And they said, what are you going to do next? And he says, Trevor Lawrence.
Jacksonville.
We'll see. Yeah, I think the Eagles they're a game back from the Commanders right now, and I think they're going to be pushing them the rest of this season. I don't think they're going to let up now that they've got their wide receivers back, and I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. And I think it is going to be a 2-horse race there. I don't think the Cowboys are going to get back into it necessarily, and I don't think the Giants are anywhere close. So, yeah, treat for the Eagles. Bengals, I think this is who you are this year. We keep saying, oh, they're going to come back, and I've already heard Burrow say this next game against Las Vegas is a must-win. I think you're past that. I think how many wins did the Bengals even have right now? They have 3.
Yeah, I think they're 3-5 or 3-4. Yeah, 3-5.
I don't even know if they can. We'll see. Maybe, but it definitely is a must-win if they plan to, and basically all the rest are too. And so.
Yeah, from Joe Burrow's perspective, the dude's a competitor. And that's what I love about him. He's never going to walk in as their starting quarterback and say, guys, I think we should lose this one. Right.
That was a really good Joe Burrow impersonation, by the way. That's exactly how he sounds. I'm not even joking. Like that was good.
Yeah, and so it's just not going to happen, right? Joe Burrow, and that's part of the reason why we love him as football fans, is he goes out there and he just fights tooth and nail every single down. And he's going to elevate his team to the best of his ability to do so. And so every week you're never going to hear him. Yeah, I don't think so. It's always going to be, yeah, this next one, we're going to be working hard. We're going to be focusing a lot. And that's what's going to lead to long-term success, provided that the organization supports that. And I think the Bengals are on board with supporting Joe Burrow and his leadership.
Yeah. Saints Chargers, we've got a couple different teams here with quarterbacks they're trying to support. Thinking of the Saints with Carr, but they lost 26-8. Chargers over Saints.
Well, it was Spencer Rattler, right? Starting quarterback, or was
you're right.
Carr back in?
Back yet, but Carr is coming back, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, but for me, Matthew, to your point, if Carr was in, I'd say this was definitely a trick. That was not what I was expecting. Given Spencer Rattler is in, I think it was a treat. We talked about Harbaugh coming into the Chargers, working on revamping what they have. We're big Justin Herbert fans on this podcast as well. We think he has tremendous upside. We just never thought that he had the right situation around him to tap into his potential. And so this is an example where I think you can start to tap into his potential and kind of see where he can go, provided you can poke and prod in the right areas. Treat.
Yep, treat all the way down to the scoreboard. Chargers win ugly and like games that you want to kind of look away from, but they still come away with a win. And at one point, the score was 9-5, Chargers on top. So like it was in all phases. It was a treat both ways.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think the Chargers are going to get there this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They're already at 4 wins, but they're in the division with the team that has 7. I don't think they're going to make a wild card necessarily in the AFC. So maybe next year, Harbaugh will begin to push even harder into those playoffs. Let's go on to Bills Seahawks. Here's one that I expected to be closer because I kept counting out the Seahawks earlier in the year, but they kept doing well. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to grudgingly say they're a better team than I have been giving them credit for. Mm-hmm. But then they went against the Bills and it was 31-10 at the end. Bills win over Seahawks. Trick or treat.
I got a trick for this one. This was my my game last week. And I was really confident it was going to be a really solid game for both teams. And Seattle just couldn't hold it together all game. And that's just, it's frustrating as a fan to watch that. I mean, I guess you can say a treat if you're Buffalo, because you can make the argument that, oh, Seattle's actually not really that bad of a team, and we just went in and stomped them, right? Like that's a treat for Buffalo. But just watching the game, I think it was a trick. I was expecting a little bit more out of Seattle. Maybe if it was 27-31, we could have called it more of a treat. I got a trick on this one.
I'll go treat because like Seattle's defense has been so up and down this season that I don't know really who they are. And I think on a week in, week out basis, they can be just like one completely different team. They held the Falcons to 14 points the week before and got a couple of one defensive score. Then they gave up 36 points to the 49ers and 29 points to the Giants the week before that. Like, I don't know what this defense is. So I have to assume that they're not consistent and they're not that good, even with the former Ravens defensive coordinator as their head coach. Meanwhile, I think Buffalo is a team that should be able to put up, 30 points every single week when their offense is rolling. So I've got a treat.
Okay. Moving on, Commanders Bears. We've kind of already talked about this one. I'm going to start off by saying this. I think this was a trick and a treat. I think it was a treat because I think the Commanders are better than the Bears. And I think it was a trick because the way it ended was like such a pull the rug out from under a Bears team that like looked and probably were celebrating and feeling. You looked at them on the sidelines after they got that touchdown with like less than a minute, and everybody's happy and smiling and hitting each other on the back. And then you look at them a few seconds later, right after that little boink flip, and man, what a way to have it yanked out from under you.
But what a classic Bears look. Right. It's my favorite one. It's my favorite treat.
We are going to have no Bears fans ever watch this podcast anymore. They're going to be like, I can't stand that Brandon guy.
Good. Come at me. I'll take it.
Come at me, bro.
I think it was a little bit of a trick in terms of, I think Caleb Williams is capable and of more than what he showed against the Commanders in that game. I think it is a treat, though, because I mean, like, Jane Daniels has kind of struggled a little bit against good defenses. Not like struggled, but struggled to score points, like to actually like push it into the end zone. And we saw 4 field goals in this game. It kind of reminded me of that week 2 win that they had against the Giants, who, despite all their inefficiencies, their front 7 is pretty good. So when the defensive line can give Washington a little bit of a hassle, Jane Daniels still going to be able to move the ball, but just struggles to put it in the end zone. And a matter of fact, the only touchdown they score is that kind of Hail Mary lucky sort of touchdown. So I think the Washington Commanders are that good as their 6-2 record shows. I think they played against a good defense in the Chicago Bears that kind of held them to below what you would traditionally expect Washington to score this year. So I think it's a treat for what the Commanders can do and a trick a little bit for what the Bears can do.
I'm going to go with a treat, obviously. Anytime the Bears lose in this fashion, I was more excited about this game than the Packers game. I'm not going to lie. The ending of this game, like the Packers winning with a field goal. Yeah, it's exciting. It feels good. But the Bears losing this way, it goes into an iconic vault in my memory. We have 2018 Week 1 at Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers limps off. We think they're done. He comes back in the second half and just torches them. That's one of those. The double doink, everyone knows it. There's a play with Mitch Trubisky. I know, one of their former quarterbacks from just a couple of years ago, throwing a Hail Mary. The Bears catch it on the 1 yard line and get stopped to lose the game. There was a Justin Fields Hail Mary as well, where he threw it into the end zone. It got bobbled 5 or 6 times by both teams and ended up an interception. It's just one of those classic moments that it's like on a nice cold day eating soup. It just warms the soul, right? An absolute treat. I will never forget this moment.
Spoken like a true Packers fan. There's no doubt who you are and who you root for is there, and who you root against. And I think there's that saying that a loss. Well, no, never mind. Let's move on. Broncos over Panthers, 28-14. Double the score. Bo Nix, again, showing Josh just what he's made of. Josh is probably so excited about that. But this is the Panthers. Is this a trick or a treat, Josh?
It is a trick for the Broncos offense. Don't expect Bo Nix to go, 20? Don't expect him to throw for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns in any game for the rest of his career again, unless they play the Panthers again in 4 years and he's still in the league. No, I mean, he played a good game. He played the best game of his career so far. So I kind of have some egg on my face there. I don't expect them to play that sort of offense through most of the rest of the season. Meanwhile, for the Panthers, when they're led by Bryce Young, like that's kind of what I do expect is, a couple of touchdowns, one late, and 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The line on Bryce Young seems about right for me. So I'll go treat for the Panthers, trick for the Broncos.
Yeah. You get, I'm just going to jump in real quick before Brandon. You get people right now saying, well, the Broncos have the same number of wins as the Vikings. But you got to look at who they beat to get those 5 wins. It's not the same. Anyway,
there's
Brandon.
An asterisk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan of anyone just watching developing quarterbacks, these are 2 quarterbacks to watch: Bryce Young and Bo Nix. Obviously, Bryce Young, number 1 from last year. Bo Nix taken in this past draft. Bo Nix is obviously developing more, and we talked about quarterback development a little bit earlier in the podcast. But if he's got the right people around him, he's making improvements week to week, you're going to see that success on the field during the games. And so I think that's what Bo Nix has been able to do. And I just don't think Bryce Young has been supported the way he should have been in Carolina. I don't think I'm stretching on anything there. I think it's pretty obvious, given how he played last season and so far this season and where the organization is as a whole. A treat for the Broncos, just seeing a young guy get some confidence under him.
Yeah, and I will put that asterisk in there again. The level of competition that they've beaten to get those 5 wins, not stellar. So.
And Sean Payton even said it in his post-game conference. He came right out and said, "This is not a good offense that we played against," which is like you don't ever hear a head coach like he's just bashing the other team. But Sean Payton's the only guy that does that, and he did that to the Panthers.
Yeah. He had to get back at his old NFC South rival, right? Let's see here. Well, Chiefs Raiders, 27-20. Chiefs win. They're 7-0. Blah blah blah. Did you guys see anything in this game that you even want to comment on?
I think it's actually a bit of a trick. The Raiders right now are not good. Not at all. And for a game to be within 7 points, I know Kansas City they've come out and they're like, well, we're not really playing at the level that we know we can. And I do think there's some truth behind that. I don't know the reasons behind it per se. I think that's more an internal struggle that they're having, or it's just a perception of hype that everyone's given them that they don't think they can live up to. I would have expected this to be a much larger game. I understand it's divisional. It was in Vegas. But to me, it tricked me a bit. Like I didn't have any interest in watching this game, but with as close as it was, I might have watched it. Now, I did not watch it, but I might have.
It was within the realm of possibility, but I could have.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. You're saying this is a trick because it was closer than it should have been with a team that was bad and a team that was obviously good. And so that's a trick. But yet earlier we heard that when Green Bay was 3 points over the Jaguars, which is a bad team with a close margin and a good team that should have won by, that was a treat.
Wait, but why did I say it was a treat? Because I gave a reason for that,
treat.
Matthew. Yeah, any win for the Packers is a treat.
Okay, just making sure.
So we have these, like, for being foster parents, my wife and I, we have to make sure our cabinet doors are locked with a specific sort of lock. These are called magnet locks. And when you put the magnet up to the cupboard door, there's a barrier there, but the magnet can still like come, it'll still attract the magnet and it will allow the door to unlock in that way. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs are. They are this magnet lock where they're going to bring whatever team it is that they're being propelled against. They're going to bring them within one possession and make it a close game. But there's still that barrier, that point gap that exists, that will have them coming up, that will stop them from touching one another and having the lock, go past the magnet. There's that barrier, there's that gap there, that kind of stops that. So they will always play these sort of games like against whoever they play against, it seems. And in this case, it was just the Raiders who were being pulled by the Kansas City Chiefs magnet lock.
Yeah, and once again, Kansas City comes out with a win. Not playing great, but they're 7-0. They're the only undefeated team, and it's just not fair. But the universe does what the universe does, and Kansas City wins. So there they are. Cowboys 49ers. 49ers over top Cowboys by 6 points, 30-24. Trick or treat.
I'm going to say I was wrong on this game going into this week. I had it, I think, listed as a possible manure game. And I know we talked about it. It's the most exciting non-divisional rivalry in the NFL. And I think we got a non-divisional rivalry right here in this game. I did not expect the Cowboys to put up 24 points. I expected them to put up like 12. So they doubled my expectations. So it was a treat as like an NFL fan to come in and just see good, gritty football. It was a pretty aggressive game too. I was watching it because Brock Purdy was my quarterback this week, and I'm like, all right, well, let's just see what he can do. I wish he threw like 19 more touchdowns in this game because it would have helped my fantasy team win, but that did not happen.
I will also say it's a treat just to see the Cowboys lose. For me, America's team lose, you got it, brother. Treat right there. And on that fantasy note, I almost won my second game of the year, and the Colts played horribly. I have the all Colts team. Anthony Richardson had 2 of 15 completions, and I almost won by less than a point.
It was 0.4 is what you lost by.
I'm just going to say, I'm just putting that out there. This team should never have won, and I almost did on that performance. Whoa. Trick or treat on this one, Josh.
I think it's a treat. Like, the 49ers dominated throughout most of this game before the Cowboys made a run. And we've seen the Cowboys do that, like against the Ravens, making a run, falling short. And we've seen the 49ers get out to big starts. We've seen Kyle Shanahan teams get out to big leads and almost blow them, or in many cases actually blow them. So I think it's a treat.
And then the last game, Steelers, Giants. I think this is completely what we all expected. Steelers beat Giants, but this was also Russ coming out and proving, I'm the one to roll with right now. 26-18. Is that what it was? Yeah, over the Giants. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just keep giving George Pickens the ball. That's when you're going to be doing the bet. He can make circus catches all over the field. So that's what Russell Wilson's doing, and it's working for him.
Yeah. Brandon, anything to add?
No, I liked it. It was a treat. Russell Wilson's doing some good stuff. I think better than expectations that we had for him going into the season.
Okay. What we're going to do now, we're already at 128. We're going to run through. I'm just going to say the teams. You guys say trick, meaning I'm excited about this game, or treat. This is that barrel of coffee flavored candy, or the toothbrush and apple. Okay. So not a trick in that it's going to trick us and we're not going to expect it. A trick is in that was not a good thing to receive. So trick or treat for Texans Jets tonight.
Trick for me.
It's going to be a bad game.
Yeah. Yep.
I would love to see the Jets win this. But
I'm going to go treat.
They will. Yeah. Because you're going to watch the Jets lose.
No, it's just the Texans offense is so banged up right now, and I kind of like the Jets defense.
Hey, I'd take a loss for them.
A treat.
If it ends a loss, that's a treat for me too.
I also like defenses that allow Jacoby Brissett to score game-winning touchdowns on them in the final minute.
We'll be Joe Mixon this week.
How about this one? Dallas, Atlanta.
I like that one. That's a treat.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good game. How about Denver, Baltimore? Now, I'm going to tell you something. They have the same record, guys. Denver with Bo Nix has the same record as Baltimore with Lamar Jackson.
That's what makes it a trick. That's what makes it a trick right there.
It'll be a treat. It'll be a treat to watch Bo Nix come crash landing back to
that's what you're excited about. That's
and for treat. Sean Payton's smug smile and smug comments to be erased after the game and just kind of have him in that harumph grumpy mood. That's always
imagine how
that's
bad it will be for you if it goes the other way.
Yes, I'm doubling down though. I'm doubling down.
Miami Buffalo.
Treat.
Yeah, I'll say treat.
I'm hoping
Tua's back in the second week. Yeah,
I'm hoping Tua shows more. If Tua shows more, treat. If it's just a complete blowout, I guess it's still a treat. It's fine. New Orleans, Carolina.
Trick. Ugh.
Trick.
Who
cares? 1-win team and a 2-win team. What? Las Vegas, Cincinnati.
That's a trick.
Yeah, I would agree. Brandon.
I'm gonna go treat. Contrary. I think Cincinnati's offense gets it.
You are still rooting for that Cincinnati hard.
I love Joe Burrow, man.
Yeah.
I just love everything he brings to that field.
Well, I'm glad he's in Cincinnati. I do hope they do better, but I think that game's still not that exciting, even if they win, because they're beating Las Vegas. Chargers, Cleveland. Chargers, Browns.
Treat.
Rick.
Oh.
Sorry, I like when the Chargers win. Like, it's not aesthetically pleasing to me. And when the Browns win, it's also not. I guess except for last week, the Browns playing offense just has not been aesthetically pleasing as well for most of the year. And granted, that was with a different quarterback, but that's why it's a trick for me.
Okay,
I think it's going to be a close game, 3 points or less.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't really have strong thoughts, strong love for either of those teams right now. I've always loved Justin Herbert. So, yeah, we'll see. Washington, New York.
The Giants.
Giants. Washington Giants.
I'll go trick. I think the Commanders have become a lot better since the first time they met earlier in the season, and I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided affair.
Yeah, trick as far as a game that's going to be exciting to watch. Treat for Josh because his team's going to win. The same reason the Green Bay was treat for Brandon earlier. New England, Tennessee. Trick.
Yeah, especially if Drake May's not playing, he would be the only reason to watch the Patriots. It's a trick.
Chicago, Arizona. Both sitting with 4 wins. Trick or treat.
Depends on the outcome. Depends 100%.
Yeah, I'll say treat. A couple. Caleb Williams was at Oklahoma under Lincoln. It's a couple of Lincoln Riley products facing off in the NFL, so it should be fun to watch.
Jacksonville, Philadelphia.
Trick.
I'll go treat because I really like because one, it's Doug Peterson going up against his old team, and then also I think it's fun to watch this Jaguars offense, and I feel like they're just going to be in a lot of shootouts because their defense is so bad and their offense at times can look really good.
I started to say I fully expect. I hope Philadelphia wins that one. Then this one, Detroit, Green Bay. I'm not only going to say treat. I'm going to say this is my marquee of the week. If you have to pick one, my goodness, This is going to be so fun.
I would agree with you, Matthew. While we've been sitting here, the report is Jordan Love will play this week. He practiced today. He was looking good, and so it's my treat. I've enjoyed, since Dan Campbell has come to Detroit, these Green Bay Detroit matchups. I have not always been thrilled about the results, because I think the past 6 games Green Bay's 1-5, so it's not overly favorable to Green Bay. But they have been like really solid games, and Dan Campbell has just been so freaking smart, like coming out, and we give credit to the Shanahan offense, to a guy that's not a Shanahan guy out of that coaching tree. He is exceptional for what he's able to do. He's outsmarted Matt LaFleur a number of times. Just by the end of the game, they've won. And Matt's had a tough go against them. Again, 1-5 in the past six games. So I think it'll be a treat. I'm not overly optimistic Green Bay is going to win the game, just as when Minnesota and Detroit played 2 weeks ago. Josh was not overly optimistic for them, but I love watching Detroit play football. I love watching the Packers play football. If I try to just think about it as a football fan, it'll be a good game.
Yep, treat battle for the top of the NFC North Division. It'll be a fun one.
And depending on this, no, I guess it's let's hit one game in between there. The Rams and Seattle. I always have to think LAR is Los Angeles Rams every time. Rams, Seattle.
I think it's a treat. I think this is also, it might not be for the battle at the top of the division, but both the teams can create at least some separation between the two of them.
Yeah, this is the one where there's only one game difference between the Rams and the rest of the 3 teams, and this is a chance for them to kind of stay in that race. Yeah,
on this matchup specifically, San Francisco's on a bye week this week, so they can't go up or down in terms of their wins losses. But if Seattle wins and Arizona loses, Seattle jumps to number 1 from number 3 in the NFC West.
And if the Rams win and Cardinals and the Seahawks would obviously lose, that puts everybody at 4 wins, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yep,
it does.
Colts, Vikings.
Yeah, treat. We're gonna watch Joe Flacco throw some interceptions, and and Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard are gonna get to the quarterback like 6 times, and Justin Jefferson will be grittying all the way down the field on a couple of those touchdowns.
So he's feeling pretty confident about a Vikings win here. I think with Joe Flacco, we actually it makes it a little harder for our run game because you don't have to worry about Joe Flacco, but he is a better passer, and we'll see just how much our defense can make it hard on your Vikings. But I have a feeling I'm going to come out of this feeling tricked. We'll see.
I think it's going to be a treat game with the one caveat on seeing if the Colts can catch the ball when it's thrown to them. I know it's just been a problem. It happens. They get the yips. I don't think it's a long-term issue for you, Matthew, but it does need to be addressed in the short term.
Something's got to change. I can understand A.D. Mitchell, rookie, not
Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. should be doing way more than he's doing. Josh Downs has been great since he's been back. Alec Pierce. Joe Flacco has thrown some super long ones to Alec Pierce, just like, he's taking them from everybody. So could be a big play. I think it'll be a treat game, even if we end up not winning that one. So lastly, Bucks Chiefs.
Treat.
If you like that sort of thing. Watching the Chiefs win.
But all their games are 1 possession games, so and it's a Super Bowl rematch from a couple of years ago. So
yeah,
true.
The COVID Bowl.
That's the one that Tampa Bay came out on top of. Whoa,
that's right.
It's the only one Kansas City has not come out on top of in the last several times it's gone. So
yeah, this time it's not in Tampa Bay; it's in Kansas City.
Yeah. So there you go. Well, we are just over an hour and a half, so we probably should
talk for another 6 hours.
Talk for another 6 hours. Now we're going to go ahead and kind of go from here. But guys, thank you for joining us here on the Football Fandemic. We're going to come back next week and see just how some of these trick or treats worked out. See you guys all then.